Hello everyone, welcome to another video on the channel. Welcome to a video where we are going to take a look at heavy damage in Gran Turismo 7 and actually discuss and look and feel about how it actually affects the car. So why are we taking a look at heavy damage? Well, in the GTWS Manufacturers and Nations series for the GT1 League at least, heavy damage has been implemented. And we all know that's like a bad thing, not in terms of it being brought into the game, but it's a bad thing to get heavy damage because the difference between heavy damage and light damage is light damage repairs itself after 30 seconds, heavy damage only repairs itself when you go into the pits. So I set up a little bit of testing here at Blue Moon Bay, one of the shorter courses. You can take a look at the settings we've got here. We've kept everything absolutely as equal as possible because we're going to take a look at lap times. So heavy damage is on, equal conditions are on, and tyre and fuel are off. So very much kind of like time trial conditions. So yeah, I wanted to do a little bit of testing here. We're in the Mercedes AMG GT3 from 2016. No particular reason for picking that car except it just kind of caught my eye with that lovely blue livery that we have on it. And the reason we picked the track is because I wanted a short track where I could do repeatable laps and test the kind of top end of a car and see what effect the various kind of damages would do to the car. So the damage model is fairly simple in Gran Turismo 7. I think it's probably a good thing. You can really only damage the front splitter, the rear wing, basically the four parts of the suspension, and you can also break the engine. So coming into the last corner here at Blue Moon B infield, is it? I can't remember. You think I'd kind of maybe looked that up before I even started the video. But yeah, this is going to be our control room. We've got a healthy car at this point, absolutely no damage whatsoever. And we're going to take a couple of measurements as we come to the start finish line and also when we reach the 100 metre board, which is where we're going to brake. So crossing the start finish line here at 158 miles an hour. And when we get to the 100 board, which is where we brake for turn 1, 162 miles an hour. Now, we'll carry on this lap. We'll just fast forward through it just to get an idea of the lap time that the car will do with a healthy car. So a 48.741, and that was a pretty decent lap to be fair. That was about a tenth and a half quicker than I had previously done before I started recording the footage because I just wanted to get an idea of how to get the car around the track. So healthy car, 158 at the start finish line, 162 at the 100 metre board, and a lap time of 48.71. So let's get some damage onto that front splitter. So that's the first thing I wanted to test. Now I picked up front splitter damage at the GTWS race at Suzuka, and when I tested and had a look back on the replay, I could see that that had caused a significant reduction in my top speed. So let's take a look at what sort of effect that's going to have on our Mercedes here at Blue Moon Bay. So remember, as we cross the start finish line, 158 miles an hour for the healthy car, and you can already see we're struggling to actually get to the top of fifth gear. I'm going to cross the start finish line at 152, 153 maybe at a push, and at the 100 board 156 before we hit the brakes. So a significant amount of loss on the top speed there, and that was just a little bit of a tap on the barrier. You know, it's not like we kind of absolutely smacked the car off it. Just a little bit of a tap, you know, what could easily happen if you kind of miss your braking point and tap the back of someone. Completed that lap there, 49.8, so 1.1 seconds slower than our healthy car. So that's over a 48 second lap, and albeit there is a lot of top end required for a lap here, that's quite a significant reduction in lap time, or increase in lap time. Now, what we're doing here is we are kind of basically wanting to test, you know, if you kind of repeatedly damage the same part of the car, will it actually, you know, does the damage, is there a kind of scale of the damage, if you like? Is there a kind of, you know, minor tap, you only get a little bit of damage, and then if you keep sort of damaging that same piece of the car, is there a kind of, you know, a scale where the damage starts to affect the car a little bit more? So we gave the front splitter a good whack off the barrier there another 5 or 6 times, and coming down to the start finish line, 153 when we just tapped it once, and about 152, 153 is the same. Coming into turn 1, we only get to 155 this time. We did get to 156 last time, but I would say that's probably within the margin of error. It just crept into 156 the first time. Let's complete the lap here. Still 6 tenths down at the first sector, and coming over at the start finish line, we do a 50.0, which is about a tenth and a half off what we did with the damage the first time round. So it doesn't look like there's that much of a scale in terms of the damage. So, you know, it's basically you bump the splitter once, you pick up the damage, and then if you continue to hit the splitter off other barriers, backs of other cars, etc., then there doesn't seem to really be too much of a scale. So, next thing on the agenda was let's damage the rear wing. I think it's the rear wing it's going to represent damage to at the rear of the car. So obviously the telemetry for the damage is down there at between the tyres. You can see when you damage something it flashes red. So we've given the rear wing, or I guess maybe the rear splitter or diffuser. I guess it could be the diffuser damage. Floor damage. Who knows? It doesn't really tell us anywhere in the game what these things represent. But anyways, we have given it a dunt off the barrier a couple of times, nothing too major, and let's see how that affects the top speed of the car, if at all, as we come back down to turn 1. So 152, 153 was the start finish line speed when we only had front splitter damage. You can see again that's had a good impact. 148, and into turn 1 at the 100 board, I think that was 151, so again a significant reduction. So we went from 162 at the 100 metre board with no damage at all, down to 156 when it was just front splitter damage, and then down to 151 with front splitter and rear diffuser damage. I think we'll call it diffuser for the rest of the video. Finished that lap there at 58.7, so about 7/10 slower. In fact, if you can go from lap 4, which was the damage with just the front splitter, that's another second lost for damage on the rear as well. So you can see how the damage is now starting to add up. So one piece of damage is bad, 2 bits of damage are worse. Let's say now damage the front suspension or tyres, as I suspect that part of the car is representing. We'll call it suspension because I think it's probably, you know, suspension damage probably makes more sense. So we've tapped the wall on the left and the right. We broke the front suspension on the rear, the front suspension on the right and the left. Let's take a look and see whether that impacts top speed. So around 148 I think is what we were doing, and well, maybe slightly, certainly within margin of error. We're down to 150 there into turn 1, so there's maybe a little bit of top speed damage with the suspension. Would make sense, the car wouldn't be running quite as smoothly. But I didn't really feel with the suspension damage, or indeed with the aero damage, to be perfectly honest with you, that the car was significantly affected through the corners. It all seemed to be in the top end department, or maybe even a little bit of accelerations. But we'll come round to finish this lap here. We'll see how the lap time is going to stack up compared to our other lap times we've done. So it's a 48.7 for the healthy car, 49.8 for front splitter, and then a 50.7 for front splitter and rear diffuser, and then we've done a 50.4 with the splitter, diffuser and also suspension damage. So it does suggest that suspension damage, if it's just a minor tap, is not that significant. It's definitely the front and the rear of the car that is more heavily affected. So let's continue to try and incur some more damage to the suspension and see if we can actually, if there's a little bit of a scale for the suspension. Now I do remember back in the GT Sport days, if you continue to just kind of crack the sides of the car off in the suspension, you could actually bend the steering so that the steering wheel would actually, when you went into the cockpit view, the steering wheel would actually be crooked even though you were going in a straight line. So that's what we're going to test here. We've given the suspension a good bit of abuse off the barriers there before we started this lap. As we come onto the straight, it doesn't really look like it's bent the suspension too much. It looks like the car is running in a fairly straight line. But have we actually lost a little bit of top speed? I'm not sure. It could be to do with but we only crossed the line there at 144 miles an hour and 145 miles an hour as we got to turn 1. We'll complete this lap here. So the car is pretty broken at this point, and it's going to be a 51.5. So the more damage we're occurring, the more we're hitting the car off the barriers, the slower this car is going each and every time. So there does appear to be a little bit of a scale on the damage. Obviously we're damaging more and more pieces of the car now as well. Then I've only got 2 bits of the car, well actually 3 bits left of the car to damage. What we're going to do now is we're actually going to break the rear suspension on the car. So reversing into the walls at the right angle, and then we've got all parts of the car with the exception of the engine flashing red. So this is a pretty ill car by this point. let's head down towards the start finish line and see just how much speed we've now lost compared to a healthy car. So remember, start finish line was 158 in a healthy car, 162 at the 100 metre board, and we've been gradually reducing or losing speed each time we incur a little bit more damage. Going to cross the start finish line here at 140, so 18 miles an hour down, and it's only 141 into turn 1, maybe 142 there actually, so, and 20 miles an hour lost as we go into turn 1. And as we come across the start finish line for the lap time, we're going to be 3.5 seconds down. So yeah, the more parts of the car you damage, as would make sense, the slower the car starts to go. Now if it's just a minor tap on some of the barriers, then it doesn't seem to, you know, it's kind of almost like minor damage, but it does appear if you actually really abuse the car off the barriers, if you like hit the barriers harder, then there might be a little bit of a scale in the way that the damage kind of then ramps up. So yeah, that's a lot of information to take in, and I think, you know, obviously the conclusion is, you know, you don't want to be damaging your car because it's not good for it. So yeah, hardly a groundbreaking conclusion there. Anyway, let's move on to test the engine damage as well, just to kind of give you have to actually hit the wall pretty hard. So front engine car, you've got to hit the wall with a fairly significant impact to actually break the engine, to be fair, so it's hard to pick up engine damage, which is probably a good thing, because you know, somebody rams you pretty hard, then it's bad enough that you maybe pick up splitter or diffuser or suspension damage, but if you break your engine, then it is absolute curtains. Basically the car loses about, I'd say about, I don't know, 40% of its power, and yeah, you're not going to be able to carry on with that. It's definitely going to be a pit stop necessary if you break the engine. However, I did hit the wall pretty hard there, and I kind of noticed something and I went, wait a minute, this steering isn't straight. So we're going to jump into cockpit view here, and what you should see is that, yeah, I mean, it's not like sitting at a crazy angle, but we're definitely having to hold the car at a slightly jaunty angle to keep it going in a straight line. So you can actually break the steering a bit like you could in GT Sport. It was definitely a bit easier in GT Sport to kind of break the steering with heavy damage on, but maybe the fact we've only got the one part of the suspension broke there is the reason why the steering has gone a little bit crooked, because when we initially tested it, we actually broke both parts of the suspension. So maybe it's just the fact we broke one, but maybe it's also the fact that we absolutely, you know, rammed into the wall at over 140 miles an hour, which might be another reason for the steering arm, I guess, being a little bit bent. So we'll carry on here. We're going to come into the pits. I just want to sort of show you what happens when you come into the pits to fix heavy damage. Now, there appeared to be a bug in GTWS. They appeared to have changed something where to repair the damage, it didn't actually cost you any time, whereas if you do it in a lobby or in a custom race, there is actually a kind of countdown as the damage is repaired, which is what I was expecting to happen in GTWS races. But it appears they've maybe tried to let you fix the damage for nothing, if you like, without any kind of time loss. So you can see here, everything's counting down. Aero takes 3 seconds, suspension's 2 seconds, the engine is 6 seconds. When you enter the pits in GTWS, it just didn't really have any kind of countdown timers like it did there. And maybe possibly occurred a little bit of a bug, because I broke my suspension and the front splitter in my GTWS race, and when I went into the pits it fixed the suspension but didn't fix the front splitter, which was very, very frustrating indeed. So hopefully something they can fix for the Gran Turismo World Series, as pitting and not getting your damage fixed was, yeah, a little bit soul destroying. And as you can see, even just a little bit of damage on the front splitter, you're losing so much speed down the straight that a lot of circuits that's going to be worth, you know, 2 seconds, 2.5 seconds. Somewhere like Suzuka with a lot of long straights, just carrying that front splitter damage would have been very, very detrimental. But yeah, I'm going to leave it there. I have rambled on a whole lot for this one, folks. I do apologise. Hopefully you've learned a little bit how heavy damage works. There's a whole lot more testing to be done, to be perfectly honest with you, but this video's already gone on for 15 minutes for me just to test that little bit there. To test everything would just take me hours, and it'd be a very long and probably very boring video. But hopefully you've enjoyed this one. I've kept it as short as possible. Hit that like button, please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Thank you very much for watching. Catch you on the next one. Goodbye now.